Which MLB prospect is going to be the next big breakout for 2023? Here to talk Major League Baseball prospects, my top 10 guys heading into this season, ones you definitely want to know for fantasy baseball, guys that could break out, and I will reveal at the end my favorite pick, not just for Rookie of the Year, but for Fantasy Rookie MVP. The first guy I need to talk about is the one that is number one on the MLB Pipeline's prospect list. That would be Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles. Going to be very popular in fantasy baseball draft. He did get a cup of coffee last year and did not disappoint. Not only did he show off his power from the left side, but as it turned out with, small sample size, of course, that's the caveat, but in what he did in the majors, he actually wound up number 6 in hard hit rate among all players. So we're talking about guys like Aaron Judge, of course, Yordan Alvarez, some of the best sluggers in the game, and he was already ranking right up there. Now, can he sustain that for a full season? We'll see. But you've got to be excited about his power, and also it doesn't hurt that he happens to be eligible at both third base and shortstop in many platforms. Third base, pretty much a handful of guys, 5 or 6 you can really count on in fantasy. And then there's a huge dead zone. In fact, it's just a cliff, right? Because after that, you're really hoping for a guy to break out. Well, you know what? Maybe this is the guy because he's already one of the top prospects. He's going to have inside track to a starting job. Doesn't really matter where he plays, third, short, however they use him. He's going to get a chance. And I know you're a little worried maybe about Baltimore and the way they changed that park last year, the dimensions kind of hurt some hitters, especially guys like Ryan Mountcastle. That was a little bit more for the right-handed bats because of the left field wall. Now, still not as favorable as it used to be, even for left-handed power, but still, you've got to be excited. And only half the games are at home anyways. Henderson is definitely somebody worth picking, even at his current ADP. Next up is a guy I really don't need to say too much more about because I already spoke at length about Corbin Carroll on my hitter breakouts video if you haven't checked that one out. This is a young, exciting outfielder for the Diamondbacks, somebody who has elite speed, and by elite, I mean he's literally the fastest guy in baseball right now. His sprint speed last year in the time that he spent in the majors was the best. We haven't seen a whole lot of him. We don't have this big track record in the minors because, of course, the COVID year. He's had a lot of injuries, so he was sort of fast-tracked, but then had to slow down. Well, he got a taste of the majors, didn't really let down. He hit 260, 4 home runs, 14 RBIs, and a pair of steals in 32 games. And now he will definitely get a chance to hold down an everyday job in the outfield, especially with Dalton Varsho off to Toronto. I mean, this guy really does have 25 potential. You're going to have to pay up for him in fantasy drafts. He's already a top 50 pick in a lot of places, but he's probably worth it. Now let's get to some pitching. Could not be more excited to see what Grayson Rodriguez of Baltimore could do in the big leagues. Now, this is a guy who was going to get set to do what he's been doing in the minors, and that is dominate. But then injury cut short his season towards the end. So we'll finally see him debut this year. This is the number 2 pitcher on MLB Pipeline's prospect list. He's number 1 in my book. This is a guy who is 6'5", big, imposing right-hander, and he's got some serious heat. So we know that he can strike out batters in bunches. I mean, just racked up strikeouts throughout the minors. I really don't think that's going to change much once he gets to the majors. He never had an ERA that even got to 3 in his minor league stops. I mean, the only thing that really stopped him last year, like I said, was that injury. So we're going to see him get a chance to earn a rotation spot right away. You can see a full season of a guy who has a great chance to be the AL Rookie of the Year. Next is a guy you probably have heard a lot about already. If you follow prospects, you definitely know Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals are a franchise that does not shy away from giving their young players a shot. And they seem to always have, they just keep coming, right? Where did all these players come from? They always seem to keep their farm system stocked. But Walker's a guy who just hits, and he's got that blend of both hit tool and power tool, right? He's not sacrificing one for the other. Hits well over 300 throughout the minors and has shown some great power. He's got a long, imposing swing. The only thing is, when that swing gets long in the majors and you see real big league pitching, sometimes they find holes in the bat. So I'm a little worried about whether his strikeout rate will be a little high initially. I'm not completely convinced that he will come out the gate hot. So that's why I'm not maybe quite as high on him as some others, but I still got to put him in my top 10. The upside here is massive. He could have third base eligibility, which I checked on Yahoo. As of right now, he does. And as I mentioned earlier, that is a huge help for his value. And then a guy that has been shooting up draft boards and prospect lists is Anthony Volpe of the New York Yankees. This is a guy who in 2021 was the hitting prospect of the year, and then he actually got better in 22. He had a 20-50 season. What do I mean by that? 21 home runs and 50 stolen bases. That's right. Now, before you wipe the drool off your face, let me tell you, he probably won't run that much in the majors, especially in a lineup like the Yankees. And of course, if he does get the call, when he does get the call, might be hitting at the bottom of the order. I did talk in an earlier video about a guy, Oswald Peraza, who I really like and is, probably going to hold down shortstop for them. Is there room for Volpe? Do they need him right now? It might be a mid-season call-up. It might be a late-season call-up. His upside is massive. In the Dynasty League, you know what? He's an automatic keeper, high-end. In redraft, in your fantasy baseball draft, you might have to stash him. So if you're in a league that has an NA spot or you have plenty of bench space and you can stash him, it might be worth it. Otherwise, he's a wait and see. But as far as just overall prospects, he's definitely a guy you have to keep an eye on. From the Yankees to the Sox in Boston, we've heard of Tristan Casas for a while. Well, he did play quite a bit last year, but disappointed for sure. Wound up hitting 197 in just under 100 plate appearances. Not at all what people expected because, again, this is a guy who wasn't just like a Bobby Dahlbeck where, shooting for the moon, swinging for the fences every time, has that power, but will sacrifice contact. Now, Casas is supposed to be like the total package. This is a guy who might be compared to like a Joey Votto. We'll see if he gets to those heights, but right now, one thing we do know is he does have a good eye, and that plate discipline was apparent. He had a 20% walk rate in that time in Boston last year. So maybe the problem was just being a little too patient, taking too many pitches. He's going to correct that. One thing he did also do, and you might want to take note of this, he lost 15 to 20 pounds already in the offseason, getting himself in shape. He's got the inside track to be the everyday first baseman for this team. Didn't go out and make a lot of big signings, to get a veteran. They believe in Casas. They have some young players coming up. So, you know what? This is a guy I think is worth betting on for sure. A little time, a little experience, and maybe it happens and all comes together in 2023. Now, stop me if you've heard this before. Third base, you're going to need to take some shots at upside if you're not getting a stud early, but there are some really good young players coming up at the position, so I don't think it'll be dry for long. And Josh Young of the Texas Rangers is definitely one of those. Also a guy who late last year was all set to take over that job. Injuries kind of derailed him. He has the power, but also a guy who will not, hit for 250, 240 average. He can hit for contact and average as well. So the job is his to take. This Texas offense could surprise some people. We already know the pieces are in place there. They got Simeon, they got Seager, Adolis Garcia, surprisingly still elite last year. Nate Lowe has arrived. I like Young down maybe the 5th, 6th spot of that lineup. Could drive in a lot of runs. And then when you talk prospects, you need to look for a catcher, right? We definitely need help at catcher, and there's some good ones coming up as well. I'm going to look at Francisco Alvarez of the New York Mets. This is a guy who has everything that you're looking for, massive power. He's not exactly the next Adley Rutschman in the sense that I don't think he's going to hit for the same type of average, not quite the complete player that Rutschman is. First of all, Adley's not a prospect anymore, right? But also, the hype on him is not only well-deserved, but it is well-known. Alvarez definitely has gotten a lot of hype. We don't know about the playing time situation there for the Mets. They did get Omar Narvaez batting from the left side. They re-signed Thomas Nido from the right side. I'm really worried that those guys are going to keep Alvarez out of the lineup. I'm not, right? Those are just kind of stopgaps. If Alvarez arrives and he's ready for the bigs, I think he's going to get a shot to at least be in a platoon. And we've seen most catchers these days aren't getting everyday playing time anyways. He's a guy who does have 20 homer upside, in a redraft league. Risky to draft him, but definitely somebody who could crack the top 10. Now let me tell you about a guy that is high up on most prospect lists, but if you're more of a casual player, you don't follow prospects too closely, you might not know Michael Busch. Well, he's for the Dodgers, and you think, well, they don't really need too much help from their farm system, but if you look at that roster, they're a little bit thinner than they have been in most years. What he could be also is what Gavin Lux hasn't been. So Gavin Lux, not a great defender, but he has so much potential offensively that he hasn't lived up to. He just seems to really not be able to put it together. So far in the minors, Busch has definitely done that. He's got much more power than Lux, maybe not quite the speed, but if this guy can come in, he's definitely going to be able to replace Lux. Busch is somebody who I think by midseason could get a chance to earn that job, and he can qualify either second base or maybe be pushed to the outfield. It doesn't matter. It's the bat that you want in there. He's got tremendous power and could potentially qualify at the middle infield spots. And to round out my top 10 list, might be a little surprise here. Now again, keeping a fantasy focus on this, guys that are going to help this year, not an overall prospect list, guys who I think will help you. Ezequiel Tovar of the Colorado Rockies is somebody who could surprise. So here's a player who is all about getting on base, could hit for average. He definitely has some speed to steal bases. I know that's not really the Rockies' thing, but you know what? It's going to have to be their thing because they don't have these big power bats anymore. This is a team that just needs to go full rebuild. They have the talent in their minor league system. Let's see guys like Zach Veen come up, Michael Toglia, all these young players, just get them on the field finally and play them. Okay, this has always been an issue with the Rockies, but you know what? Tovar, it's not an issue. He is currently penciled in for an everyday job in the middle infield. He might even be winding up as the leadoff hitter, and that would be great because good chance to score some runs. He should be given the green light to run. Definitely worth taking a shot on because of his skills. So who's going to be the biggest breakout out of all these prospects for the 2023 season in fantasy baseball? My bet is going to be on a pitcher, and that is Grayson Rodriguez. This is a guy who I think is just ready to come in and dominate from day one. Got everything you're looking for, that mix of pitches that keep batters full and that heat that he can consistently go to. He doesn't have to rely on secondary pitches. He can blow you away with a fastball, and he's done it, at every stop. He's also going to be one of those guys who does benefit, like I mentioned, from the fact that Camden Yards not a bandbox anymore, and this Orioles team is suddenly looking like it might be a surprise contender. So you're looking for an ace. It's so hard to find these reliable starting pitchers, especially once you get past the first couple of rounds in fantasy. I'm guessing that Grayson Rodriguez might be one of these players who is an instant ace, and he's my bet to break out this year. Now you know which prospects could break out. Check out who I think might break out among all pitchers right here.